Hello, middle school. Here we are for chapter 23 of The Giver by Lois Lowry, the absolutely last chapter of the book. We're so excited to finish it. Let's take a look at this together. Jonas felt more and more certain that the destination lay ahead of him. Very near now in the night he was approaching, none of his senses confirmed it. He saw nothing ahead except the endless ribbon of road unfolding and twisting narrow curves. He heard no sound ahead, yet he felt it, felt that elsewhere was not far away. But he had little hope left that he would be able to reach it. His hope diminished further when the sharp, cold air began to blur and thicken with swirling white. What's that? It was raining before. Yep. Gabriel, wrapped in his inadequate blanket, was hunched, shivering, and silent in his little seat. Jonas stopped the bike wearily, lifted the child down, and realized with heartbreak how cold and weak Gabriel had become. Standing in the freezing mound that was thickening around his numb feet, Jonas opened his own tunic, held Gabriel to his bare chest, and tied the torn and dirty blanket around them both. Gabriel moved feebly against him and whimpered briefly into the silence that surrounded them. Dimly, from a nearly forgotten perception, as blurred as the substance itself, Jonas recalled what the whiteness was. "It's called snow, Gabe," Jonas whispered. "Snowflakes. They fall down from the sky, and they're very beautiful." There was no response from the child, who had once been so curious and alert. Jonas looked down through the dusk at the little head against his chest. Gabriel's curly hair was matted and filthy, and there were tear stains outlined in dirt on his pale cheeks. His eyes were closed. As Jonas watched, a snowflake drifted down and was caught briefly for a moment's sparkle in the tiny fluttering eyelashes. Wearily, he remounted the bicycle. A steep hill loomed ahead. In the best of conditions, the hill would have been a difficult, demanding ride. But now, the rapidly deepening snow obscured the narrow road and made the ride impossible. His front wheel moved forward imperceptibly as he pushed on the pedals with his numb, exhausted legs. But the bicycle stopped. It would not move. He got off and let it drop sideways into the snow. For a moment, he thought how easy it would be to drop beside it himself, to let himself and Gabriel slide into the softness of snow, the darkness of night, the warm comfort of sleep. But he had come this far. He must try to go on. The memories had fallen behind him now, escaping from his protection to return to the people of his community. Were there any left at all? Could he hold on to a last bit of warmth? Did he still have the strength to give? Could Gabriel still receive? Pressed his hands into Gabriel's back and tried to remember sunshine. For a moment, it seemed that nothing came to him, that his power was completely gone. Then it flickered suddenly, and he felt tiny tongues of heat begin to creep across and into his frozen feet and legs. He felt his face begin to glow and the tense, cold skin of his arms and hands relax. For a fleeting second, he felt that he wanted to keep it for himself, to let himself bathe in sunlight, unburdened by anything or anyone else. But the moment passed and was followed by an urge, a need, a passionate yearning to share the warmth with the one person left for him to love. Aching from the effort, he forced the memory of warmth into the thin, shivering body in his arms. Gabriel stirred. For a moment, they both were bathed in warmth and renewed strength as they stood hugging each other in the blinding snow. Jonas began to walk up the hill. The memory was agonizingly brief. He had trudged no more than a few yards through the night when it was gone, and they were cold again. But his mind was alert now. Warming himself ever so briefly had shaken away the lethargy and resignation and restored his will to survive. He began to walk faster on feet that he could no longer feel. But the hill was treacherously steep. He was impeded by the snow and his own lack of strength. He didn't make it very far before he stumbled and fell forward. On his knees, unable to rise, Jonas tried a second time. His consciousness grasped at a wisp of another warm memory and tried desperately to hold it there, to enlarge it and pass it into Gabriel. His spirits and strength lifted with a momentary warmth, and he stood. Again, Gabriel stirred against him as he began to climb. But the memory faded, leaving him colder than before. If only he had had time to receive more warmth from the giver before he escaped. Maybe there would be more left for him now. But there was no purpose in if onlys. His entire concentration now had to be on moving his feet, warming Gabriel and himself, and going forward. He climbed, stopped, and warmed them both briefly again, with a tiny scrap of memory that seemed certainly to be all he had left. The top of the hill seemed so far away, and he did not know what lay beyond, but there was nothing left to do but continue. He trudged upward. As he approached the summit of the hill at last, something began to happen. He was not warmer. If anything, he was more numb and more cold. He was not less exhausted. On the contrary, his steps were leaden, and he could barely move his freezing, tired legs. But he began suddenly to feel happy. He began to recall happy times. He remembered his parents and his sister. He remembered his friends, Asher and Fiona. He remembered the giver. Memories of joy flooded through him suddenly. He reached the place where the hill crested, and he could feel the ground under his snow-covered feet become level. It would not be uphill anymore. "We're almost there, Gabriel," he whispered, feeling quite certain without knowing why. "I remember this place, Gabe." And it was true. But it was not a grasping of a thin and burdensome recollection. This was different. This was something that he could keep. It was a memory of his own. He hugged Gabriel and rubbed him briskly, warming him to keep him alive. The wind was bitterly cold. The snow swirled, blurring his vision, but somewhere ahead through the blinding storm, he knew there was warmth and light. Using his final strength and a special knowledge that was deep inside him, Jonas found the sled that was waiting for them at the top of the hill. Numbly, his hands fumbled for the rope. He settled himself on the sled and hugged Gabe close. The hill was steep, but the snow was powdery and soft. And he knew that this time there would be no ice, no fall, no pain. Inside his freezing body, his heart surged with hope. They started down. Jonas felt himself losing consciousness, and with his whole being, willed himself to stay upright atop the sled, clutching Gabriel, keeping him safe. The runners sliced through the snow, and the wind whipped at his face as they sped in a straight line through an incision that seemed to lead to the final destination, the place that he had always felt was waiting, the elsewhere that held their future and their past. He forced his eyes open as they went downward, sliding, and all at once he could see lights. And he recognized them now. He knew they were shining through the windows of rooms, that they were the red, blue, and yellow lights that twinkled from trees in places where families created and kept memories, where they celebrated love. Downward, faster and faster. Suddenly he was aware with certainty and joy that below, ahead, they were waiting for him, and that they were waiting too for the baby. For the first time, he heard something that he knew to be music. He heard people singing. behind him across vast distances of space and time from the place he had left, he thought he heard music too, but perhaps it was only an echo. All right, I'm going to talk for just a minute in this video at the end of the book because it's possible that if I'm not there, I might not be able to have this conversation with you. A lot of times if you're in the room, you want to say things, you have questions to ask. What happened? I also have a bell word that you're going to be responding to probably in class tomorrow about what just happened. What just happened at the end of the book. And I'm going to share something with you. So Mrs. Bauer, many of you might work with her. She used to also kind of teach 7th and 8th grade English a little bit with me. And when she didn't read this book though. And part of it was because she didn't like how it ended. How many of you were like, what? That was the ending? When we first started doing this, it was long before the movie. Now, this is a book series, okay? And there are 4 books in the series. But when you read the second book, no Jonas. There is no Jonas in the second book. It's basically just another community. You're getting a completely different set of rules. The community is very different. It's a good book. It's called Gathering Blue. I encourage you to read it. We're not going to read it together. So at the time we first discussed this, she didn't have all of the knowledge of the 3rd and the 4th book or the movie that came out. And the movie changes it, right? If you saw the movie, that's not what happened, right? They actually give you an ending, right? They gave you, this one was like, wait a minute, what just happened? So Mrs. Bauer told me she hated the ending because Jonas died. Yep. That's what happened. He slipped into the memories, right? He slipped into the memory, and unfortunately he must have like passed out in the snow, and he and Gabe died. That was initially her interpretation. And I went, oh, okay. I see that. But I'm an optimist. If you know me, I always look on the bright side. I'm like, oh, he to elsewhere. He's in the memories. He found Christmas. He found love. He found people that are going to take him in. I don't know, which one of us do you think is right? So the bell work asks whether or not it's real life or a memory. Can you support that? Is this real life or a memory? So if I am not there to talk to you, I am going to share just a little bit. I hope I don't give anything away, but I want to talk about the book series a little bit. And we will be watching the movie together in class, but not till your essay is written. Okay, so we're going to write that argumentative essay about whether or not Jonas should leave. And you got to have that essay done so that we can watch the movie. So, did you like the book? Do you want to read the next one? The 3rd book is called The Messenger, and Jonas is not the main character in that book. And it's another different community, but it connects to the community from Gathering Blue. And Jonas, his name is in that book. He's not really a main character, but he's in it. So we do know that Jonas made it to somewhere else. Now, the 4th book, called Son, Lois Lowry wrote 20 years after she wrote The Giver. And it was worth the wait. I loved it when I read it. And usually students do too. And I will tell you why. It's so different from a lot of the other book series that you read where everything connects to each other. So each of the first 3 books, you get these completely different stories. And then the 4th one ties all of it together. The only thing I will tell you about the 4th one is that, and I haven't actually read it in a while. I'm trying to remember if the entire book is from this perspective, but it starts in the old community, the 1st book, and it's about a birth mother. which is why it's called Sun, right? So if you want to read them, I used to have all of them in my classroom. I was just recently trying to go through my library because you guys know I was not here last year. And when a teacher can't always monitor her library or ask for books back, I honestly don't even know if those books are there. They might be gone. I might have to purchase some new ones, or I'm sure that our actual library down the hallway has them. But I guess I'm done talking for now. The next time we meet, we're going to be talking about your writing. We're going to do a whole lot of pre-writing, pre-planning, and some of that will be in short little videos so that you know what to do in class or if you are absent. And then we'll be watching the movie. All right, have a great day. I'll see you later.